Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Winning Drive podcast. I'm Rita Hubbard, the NFL chick, co-host of the Glenn and Rita Show on 105.7 The Fan in Baltimore, with my guy Cordell Woodland from Shaking It Up Sports and the Ravens reporter for 105.7 The Fan. And Cordell, the Ravens are at Indianapolis for the NFL Combine, and of course, coaches and GMs have the opportunity to speak to the media. So we heard Harbaugh and we heard Eric DeCosta speak on Tuesday regarding their respective teams. And let's talk about Harbaugh first, specifically regarding the role of Rashod Bateman. Harbaugh spoke very highly about Rashod Bateman, and he basically supported Rashod Bateman. I'm not really sure what that means in terms of if he's going to get his fifth-year option picked up or not, but it does. But Harbaugh, just as a coach, was giving his seal of approval when it came to Rashod Bateman. Said he expects way more catches to Rashod Bateman in 2024, and felt very confident in talking about Bateman. So when you heard those words, first of all, I guess I want to know what you thought about what he said regarding Bateman. And then secondly, how do you think that affects them from a free agency standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely reaffirms this notion that Rashod Bateman is going to be a big part of what the Ravens do next year, which I have had my own question marks about,
I think we've all, right?
right. It's like just from some of the things we've seen, some of the lack of chemistry between he and Lamar, the lack of production, to be honest with you, with Bateman. Whenever Lamar throws to him, Lamar's passer rating is not very good throwing at Rashod Bateman. So it is a little bit of a surprise to me. And like you mentioned, the fifth-year option, and I don't think Eric DeCosta was even asked about that today, which is kind of a surprise. But
Yeah.
I mean, I John was very positive talking about Rashod Bateman at the end of the season presser when we spoke to him at the end of the season as well. And, in Indianapolis, he doubles down on that. And I think what they did is, John went on to talk about some of the things they did after the AFC Championship game. And I think that when they went back and scouted themselves and went back and watched a lot of the tape, I think they probably saw that Rashod Bateman could have done more than what he did. Now, in the same breath, John is saying, he's crossing his fingers on Odell Beckham. I don't know how the two can correlate. I don't think that Rashod Bateman can be the guy. He's already competing with Zay Flowers at this point, which is fine. I have zero issue with that. But then you start talking about the Beckhams of the world, and they've already brought back Aguilar, which again, I am fine with that. I like it. But I just don't know if Beckham being there necessarily makes it that Rashod Bateman is going to be able to maximize what he can do. If they're going to go with Bateman, cool, because I've never said that I think Rashod Bateman can't play. I've never said that I don't think that he's a good player and could be a good player for them. I've had my questions on whether or not he's wide receiver one, not because I don't think he can play it, just because they haven't shown us that, I just haven't been able to see it happen on the field. It's been nothing but hopeful wishes at this point. So if they're going to make a true commitment to getting Rashod Bateman the ball and really showcasing him in this offense, which it sounds like they are, I think it could definitely work. A lot of the issues were just Lamar not looking at him. So if it turns out that Lamar actually starts looking at him and throwing him a decent ball, then we could see Bateman look like the receiver that I think everybody's been waiting to see.
Yeah, I look. Rashod Bateman has made some mistakes in the past. He's dropped easy passes before, and I can understand there's some distrust from Lamar. But I also think that we have to acknowledge that Lamar at many times doesn't even look in Rashod Bateman's way, and I don't know why that is. I don't know why they don't have a connection, particularly because it's not like the Ravens wide receiving core is like one of the best in the league, right? And that they have a plethora of options here. as we've seen many times on social media and through those that cover the Ravens from a writing perspective, Rashod Bateman is getting separated. You know what I'm saying? He's finding ways to get open. He's just not somebody that Lamar tends to look at. And look, I get it. Likely is there. Mark Andrews, when he comes back, he's going to be there. Zay is going to be there. But Rashod Bateman, to me, has all the potential in the world to be a very good number 2 wide receiver on this team. And the only way that that can happen is if he and Lamar find a way to get on the same page. And I'm hoping, Cordell, that they find some time this offseason and just go through the film and say, well, what would you have rather me do here? Like, how can we build the chemistry? What are you seeing so then I can see the same thing so then we can find a way to get on the same page? Because otherwise, this is just not going to work. And it does question whether or not, you bring him back after a 5th-year option. I go back and forth about this in terms of like, what do I think? Because I think that they want to keep it. I think that they would like to keep Rashod Bateman, but I think that it's a situation similar to Patrick Queen where they don't want that cap hit against, their cap if they accept his 5th-year option. There's also the situation of, does Rashod Bateman want to be a Raven? And is his agent or him asking, do not accept my 5th-year option because maybe I want to see what free agency looks like and see what team might be interested in me. But the fact remains is that this is year 4, and he's going to be a Raven unless trade, obviously. But he's going to be here. So if that's going to be the case, they have to find some type of connection because it is very important. If the Ravens want to abandon the run in playoff games when they're behind, whether they're behind 3, whether they're behind 7, whether they're behind 14, I don't know. They're going to have guys that can make the plays. And if Rashod Bateman is getting open, but Lamar's not looking his way, that is a connection problem. That's a mental problem between the quarterback and the wide receiver. And I'm not trying to blame either one here because I don't know who's to blame, basically. I don't know why they don't connect. But the point that I'm making is that if you are committed to not running the ball when it counts, then you have to find some type of rapport with the people that you have on your roster. And that's something that's extremely important for Rashod Bateman this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's already the good thing is he showed that he can stay healthy.
Right.
He showed
Yep.
that he can at least make it through a whole season. That's a huge hurdle in itself for a guy in his case that hasn't played a whole season to this point. And I do think Rashad, I mean, I was saying it in during training camp and stuff. I'm not going to change that now. This dude, when he's out there, he is the smoothest route runner they have. I mean, at times, and this is with Zay Flowers out there. This is with
Yep.
Odell Beckham out there. There were times Rashod Bateman, I left practice saying Rashod Bateman's the best wide receiver on this team.
Yep.
So it's without a doubt, it's in there with him. I just don't know if that connection with he and Lamar that obviously we've seen to this point, if it's going to look like that, then we won't see how good Bateman can be because that the connection with his quarterback isn't there. But I do think there's a way to fix that. Like you mentioned, them getting together this offseason, both of them being able to spend as much time as they can on the field during mini camp and training camp, because even during that time, Bateman has been on a certain schedule. He's at practice. He's not at practice. He's hurt. He's not, he's got to be able to consistently be on the field, because when he's not, Lamar's then consistently still building that rapport with Flowers, building that rapport with Aguilar,
Yep.
building that rapport with Likely, everybody
Yep.
but Rashod Bateman. I'm on NFL.com, and Mark Ross wrote a piece. I guess he's predicting on the 2021 draft class who's going to get their 5th-year option picked up. And in the case of Rashod Bateman, they're saying yes, they do acknowledge that it can go either way, but they do think that the Ravens will ultimately pick up his 5th-year option and they're kind of on the same wave that we are, where they're leaning into the potential that Rashod Bateman has. And again, potential is fine, but at some point we have to see it. And I get the analytics and everything and the videos, all the plays of him getting open and not getting the ball. they'll be there. Every wide receiver has plays where they could show us where they're getting open and they're not getting the ball. It's about what happens when the ball does get thrown to you. And I'm acknowledging Lamar plays a part in that. It's a hand-in-hand situation. Like you said, you don't know who to place blame to. I don't think there is necessarily a person to place blame on. It's just what it is. They both have a hand in this, and I think it's going to be important that relationship on the field, because I do think their off the field relationship is good.
Yeah.
On the field, though, they have to get on the same wave.
Absolutely. There's some trust issues going on, maybe on both sides, and they just got to fix it. If they're going to be playing together in 2024, they have to fix it. And hopefully they'll get that together this off season, and we'll see the results when the season starts. All right, Cordell. So we know that running backs is the hot topic for the Ravens this offseason. Eric DeCosta talked about that. As of right now, we're learning that it appears that no running back is going to be put on a franchise tag, which means all the available running backs, which is a nice plethora of running backs with names, will be available this offseason. The Ravens currently have one running back that is healthy under contract in Justice Hill. Gus Edwards is no longer, he's a free agent. Keaton Mitchell will be recovering from an ACL injury. J.K. Dobbins, obviously, he was a 4-year player, so he should be free as well. So Eric DeCosta mentioned that, they have been talking to Gus Edwards. They talked to J.K. Dobbins. That doesn't really mean a ton to me that you have a conversation with somebody. I think that the Ravens are considered a class organization for a reason, and that means that they communicate well is one of those things. But ultimately, you'd like to think that the Ravens will be looking to upgrade the running back position. Now, we all know that the information has been coming out about Derrick Henry in the trade. We all knew that that was the case anyway, and that the ownership vetoed that trade. So there's been a lot of conversations about Derrick Henry coming to the Ravens. But, I mean, you have a nice amount of options. And when you think about the 30 million surplus that the NFL has received because of with the cap situation, you feel like that the Ravens are in a good position to really get the running back that they're looking for to bolster this offense.
Yeah, I mean, and to that point, Eric DeCosta talking about the salary cap increase, he still let it be known that they have a process that they go by, and they're not just going to be out here just throwing money at people. It doesn't seem like that's what they want to do. But there are a lot of options, and you mentioned none of these guys have gotten franchise tag this year, so pretty much all of these guys will be available. And a couple of these dudes were franchise tagged last year, so it just isn't happening again. Guys like Saquon Jacobs and what's his name out of Dallas, Tony Pollard.
Yeah.
So I think there are some options. I've been talking about guys that aren't the big name guys. I'm looking at guys like DeAndre Swift, Zach Moss, but the Derrick Henry stuff definitely, where there's smoke, there's fire. And it does seem like that would make sense. I think the Ravens have gotten an up close look at Derrick Henry in January, and they have seen the type of impact that he can have on some of those games. And they start to thinking about what a guy like Derrick Henry could be for a team like them, who is already the best rushing offense really over for a while now in the NFL. And that's with Lamar Jackson being their leading rusher every year that he's been a starter. Just what would happen if the Ravens actually had a running back lead their team in rushing, actually had a running back that they could lean on to be the leader of their run game? Lamar is still a part of it, but right now, I've said it in the past, Lamar is, they need Lamar to be a runner. I think if you get a running back that you can trust in that department, then Lamar's legs becomes a little bit more of a luxury. But I think it shows in the playoffs. I continue to say I'm not condoning them giving the running backs that they did have 3 opportunities. No running back is getting in a rhythm with that. And you talk about Derrick Henry, he's a guy that definitely needs his carries early in the game to get into a rhythm to start wearing defenses down. So you're going to have to make a true commitment to a guy like that if you're going to have him on your team. But that's why I have maintained that if they do go and get one of these running backs like a Henry, like a Saquon, like a Jacobs, those are guys you have to give the ball to. It's easy to go away from Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, Lamar, is your quarterback. You only want him to run the ball, but so many times. But when you have those guys like that, they're naturally a part of your game plan. And I just would like to see what the Ravens offense would look like with a true weapon at the running back position. We got a taste of it with Keaton Mitchell and some of the
Yep.
explosive plays he were able to make. Think of what some of these guys could do.
Yeah, I agree with you. And so I know that we're hung up on the Derrick Henry thing because he was possibly going to be traded to Baltimore, but there's so many running backs out here. I would like for the Ravens to not necessarily, put their, eggs in that basket because they don't have to. You have options here. You have a lot of options here, actually. And I mean, the one thing that I know is that Josh Jacobs, more than anything, wants to be a Baltimore Raven. That is something that he has clamored for. Now, I don't know if he's willing to take some type of hometown discount, which hometown obviously is me being facetious. It's just, you want to be somewhere bad enough. At what expense do you want to be somewhere bad enough? You know what I'm saying? And I don't know if that's going to be the case because at the end of the day, everybody wants to get paid. But I do know that Josh Jacobs would love to be in the purple and black. And I would explore that option, right? Derrick Henry is a great running back, but with the questions of the offensive line and knowing that he's one of the worst running backs in the league in terms of before contact. He's one of the worst in terms of, yards before contact. And with the questions of the offensive line, I just don't know what that's going to look like. I don't, if you're going to have a new left guard, a new right guard, I don't know. You might even have a new left tackle and right tackle. I have no idea what this line is going to look like. And as good of a player as Derrick Henry is, if the line is questionable and he's the one that got pretty much he's the one that's the workhorse of all of them in terms of like mileage, right? I just don't know how that's going to look with a new revamped line that potentially has a lot of youth on it, and it's going to take time to gel. So I'm not saying that I'm out on Derrick Henry. I'm just simply saying that you have options pretty much on every level. The highest of the highs with Saquon, the lowest of the lows with Pollard and Zach Moss, who I love Zach Moss, by the way. And this is not me calling him low, but I'm talking about in terms of what it is that they'd be asking for, in my opinion. So, we know that the running game is important to the Ravens, or at least in the regular season. So they're definitely going to try to find a way to get one of those guys. And yeah, it's nice for them to say that they're talking to Gus. I wouldn't mind seeing Gus come back, but I also realize that because of the nature of the names that are available, you have to at least try to dib and dab your way into one of those guys because it would be an upgrade.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't, and again, I don't think it'll be a situation where the Ravens are looking to break the bank, and I
Right.
don't think these running backs will be as expensive as some people are imagining. I'm thinking that, maybe the top person gets max like 12 at the
Yes,
most.
I think that.
Um,
But who, if you're the Ravens, are you willing to pay that?
No, I'm
Knowing
not. I
that
don't think the Ravens are going to be the team
exactly.
to go get the highest paid running back on the open
Yep.
market. I don't think they're going to be the team. I don't think they're going to be the first team to sign a running back. I think that they'll go through their options. But at the same time, I do expect them to get somebody, and I think it'll be somebody good. I mean, Eric DaCosta talked about the draft, and he acknowledged that he doesn't think that the running back position is that deep in the draft. So I do think that they're looking at getting running backs out of free agency. I do look from what they've said and just looking at this team in general. I think that's a true priority for them. but I
Yes.
don't think that they're going to go out there and pay Derrick Henry $11 million a year. I
Yeah.
think it'll be a situation to where if they get Derrick Henry, it'll be at, at a price I think both sides are comfortable with. Fans may not be comfortable with it, but I think that the Ravens will not try to. I don't think Derrick Henry's going to be out here getting disrespected. I don't think it'll be a situation where he's taking $4 or $5 million. It may be 9, 10 max. I can see 10 at the max for Derrick Henry right now, but if he's in Baltimore, I think it'll be at a number that both sides are comfortable with.
Oh, that's gonna be anybody. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Anyone that they bring in here is gonna have to be comfortable with doing it the Ravens way. That's just gonna have to be the case. And look, this is a team that just went to the AFC Championship game. What do you might be like, I'm willing to, take a little bit less just to be on
Mm-hmm.
a team that has a lot of aspirations and has an MVP quarterback, back there. So it's definitely something we'll be watching, and the draft as well, because there are running backs coming out of the draft and it will be interesting to see how they plug this hole in. But as we know, free agency is looming, and will be obviously in play prior to the draft. So we'll see who the Ravens pick up, if they pick up anyone at all during this free agency period. All right, Cordell. So there's some tidbits here and there that both EDC and Harbaugh discussed. First one up, Justin Madubuike. Meaning EDC, said that they have been talking and they're trying to get a deal done. But if they cannot get the deal done by Tuesday, it appears that they will be putting a franchise tag on Madubuike. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, no real surprise there. They're looking to try to get a long-term deal done. I'm curious if they do. I am very curious to see what types of numbers we're talking. But yeah, I mean, they're not letting Justin Madubuike get out of that building. He's going to be in a Ravens uniform one way or another next season. But I anticipate. I'm kind of indifferent right now because I do think that there's mutual interest. Obviously, I think Madubuike does want to stay in Baltimore, and I think it's clear the Ravens want him. So I think it's right now it's kind of a toss-up in terms of whether a deal is going to get done by the franchise tag deadline. But like I said, I'm not shocked to hear that he's going to still remain in Baltimore.
75-25 chance, in my opinion, him being franchise tag versus a deal being done. That's where I am with that. So it will be interesting. I mean, I said 25. I ain't saying it's not gonna happen. I'm just saying I
Right.
feel like it might not. I feel like the chance of it not happening is stronger than the chance of it happening. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll see where that goes when the Tuesday deadline looms next week. Eric DaCosta also said that he's been texting Odell Beckham Jr. I don't know how to feel about this, considering John Harbaugh's comments about Rashod Bateman. I don't know where he fits in. He's definitely not going to get $15 million if he comes back. So have we seen the last of OBJ, in your opinion?
I think so. I mean, Harves says, he's crossing his fingers on OBJ as well. I think that they just have to say the right things. And I don't think it's a situation to where like they don't like Odell Beckham. I mean, I think that they like the guy and everything like that, but where does he truly fit into your plans? And can Rashod Bateman fully, be himself when you're bringing in a polarizing guy like that, which it was good for this year, but it was good for everybody but Rashod Bateman. So how much are you really invested in getting the most out of him if Beckham is still on this roster? And even on the flip side, I just don't know what Beckham is going to do in this offense, the way they used him, at least. And he had his moments, he had a couple of good games, but overall, it wasn't great. The experiment wasn't great. I think Beckham probably would have liked more opportunities, but I think that they kind of dropped the ball in some of the ways that they used him as well. So I don't know, but in my mind, I think the Beckham thing in Baltimore should be over.
Yeah, like using them in the slot more than outside. But who's maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm
No, it's
just
not.
a spectator. I'm gonna go ahead and mind my business on that one. All right, y'all, coming up next. Next, Harbaugh talks about The offensive line. Oh, before we get on that, I just want to say real quick that this wide receiving draft class is pretty deep. I mean, not necessarily from
Mhm.
a first round perspective, but I do think that that's more likely the case in terms of what the Ravens will potentially do, go into the draft and get some guys as opposed to bringing a guy like Odell back. All right, offensive line. John Harbaugh talks about the offensive line and how they expect some changes, and we talked about this just a couple the last segment, because I am concerned about that when it comes to the running back situation. So it feels like Tyler Linderbaum is the only certainty here.
Mhm.
Everybody else, to me, I can make a case for or against. That won't be back, will be back, who knows. So there will be some turnover on the offensive line, and that was discussed. What are your thoughts on Harbaugh's words regarding that?
Yeah, I mean, he acknowledged that there are going to be some changes on the offensive line, and he says, in a bunch of in a couple of different ways. So I don't think that they're done making it. Something just tells me that they're not done making changes on the offensive line. Like you mentioned, I mean, honestly, Linderbaum is the only sure thing that they have on the offensive line. I think if I'm a betting man, I say Ronnie Stanley is still on the team.
I do too.
I
Yep.
I don't know what that means for Morgan Moses. I don't. I think it
And
should.
we talked about that last week, right? 33
Yeah.
years old, but he will be 33 by week 1. I just want to point that out.
And but I do think Morgan Moses should still be on this team. I think Moses played well.
I do
He had
too.
his injuries, and look, he goes back out there and he finishes the season. And I thought I really think you could do far worse than having Morgan Moses as your right tackle. I truly do.
I agree.
So I'm curious to see what happens, but something tells me that maybe Moses could potentially be the odd man out. We'll see.
Well, and there's also the situation with left guard and right guard after the void year, the deadline. And Zeitler did not get signed. It feels like he's gone. John Simpson also feels like he might be gone. So there's a lot of depth also in this class coming out for offensive line as well. So it's very possible that the Ravens look within and get guys that they already have, like a Ben Cleveland. And they posted a video with Voorhees. So to
Mm.
me, that's pushing some type of narrative, Cordell. That's how PR works, okay? And so it's very possible that they'll take a look at him. He was a utility offensive lineman player at USC who did pretty well. He played left guard and right guard and center, so he has a lot of interior line experience there, and then potentially maybe get a guy in free agency, and then maybe go to the draft to kind of build up your roster there. So that part will be interesting. Harbaugh also talked about Munkin and Lamar, and how they want to build around Lamar, and how they had a conversation after the AFC Championship game. I would love to know exactly what was discussed because I mean, I know he mentioned it at the press conference the end of the year. He mentioned, that they were supposed to do this, and then that didn't happen. But he brought it up again. And I really would have just loved to be a fly in the room in
Yeah.
that conversation. But nonetheless, apparently it was he makes it so that it was a positive conversation, and they are looking forward to year 2, and how they want to do things in 2024, and how they are committed to building around Lamar. So, what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, just he said that he feels like the offense is just getting started, and he and I do to a degree believe, I agree with him when he talks about the baby steps. The offense never truly took off, even when they got hot. They did some good things, but there was always like the desire for more with the offense. There was
Mm-hmm.
always this idea that they were capable of more than what they were giving you. So I definitely do agree that they kind of just scratched the surface with the offense. I mean, look, Mark Andrews wasn't a part of this thing pretty much all year. So that's a big part of it as well. So we'll see what type of wrinkles they put in there, but their tendencies on the back end of the season have been kind of their Achilles heel. And nothing will matter if they don't change some of those things.
Completely agree with you there. So, obviously, what they do with this offseason in terms of the running back situation, in terms of if they add any wide receivers, is going to, and also the offensive line, because it appears that they potentially might want to go younger and more athletic. I think EDC said something about that anyway, about wanting to be a little bit more athletic. So it will be interesting to see how the personnel that they get this offseason, whether it be free agency or draft, plays into what it is that they do year two together, Lamar and Todd Monken. So obviously that's something that we'll be paying attention to moving forward. We want to thank you all for listening. So from Cordell to me, this is Winning Drive.